Want to know more about the various kinds of COVID-19 vaccines, including their side effects? What about checking the accountability of COVID-19 support funds and the management of resources by the relevant public officials and stakeholders? Then, join the Volunteers for Sustainable Development in Africa (VOSIDA) and the government of Liberia on the Open Development Liberia show in partnership with Africa Alliance as we create massive fact-checking awareness on the various kinds of COVID-19 vaccines administered by the relevant health teams, as we also hold public actors to give account of the COVID-19 support funds and supplies. The ODL show will host live radio interactions between health authorities and ordinary Liberians on the transparency and accountability surrounding COVID-19 vaccines, tests, and treatments, as it sets the pace for you to engage your public health officials and stakeholders. Join Amanda Yasia on the COVID-19 vaccines awareness campaign on this and every Thursday at 6 to 7 o'clock p.m. on ELBC Radio as we bring you informed discussions on the platform. Liberia show. And I'd like to say good evening and welcome to the first edition of the Open Development Liberia show on ELBC 99.9 and all the frequencies across to my guest, Mr. Tamba Johnson. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me in the studio to discuss issue of vital concern, especially when it comes to accountability and that of transparency in connection to that of the COVID testing and everything in Liberia, which has a trickle-down effect on women and children and that of the development of Liberia in our world.
The WHO declared COVID-19 as a no global health emergency, as reported by CNN online news on May 5. Now, the pronouncement was made during the WHO's International Health Regulations Emergency Committee discussed the pandemic on Thursday, May 4, as 15th meeting on COVID. I mean, when you heard this information, how did you look at it?
Well, the pronouncement by the WHO when it comes to COVID being fought and won by all of us, I use the word all of us, is a welcoming news because we all know what the COVID actually did to the global community, where lives were lost unprecedentedly and people really got devastated. And the economy actually was broken down because of this, and so many businesses got closed down and other things. So it have a devastating impact on the community, and even in Liberia, where we saw people lost in jobs and everything. So for WHO to have declared that we have zero tolerance or zero on COVID in the world is a welcoming news that shows that being serious and being collectively working together, we're able to achieve the milestone. So to me personally, I felt that teamwork actually brought the result that we have today in the world. So it's welcoming in Liberia and in the world. To me, is welcoming news.
Yes, and indeed, it's a welcoming news. You know, when I got that particular news, I was like shocked and I was also happy. However, I was now also surprised because I know that the whole world, rallied around to tackle COVID-19. Now, one of the things I'm thinking about, yes, we have tackled COVID. WHO is also still talking about, a rebound, a possible rebound.
Of which we keep using accountability and transparency. Accountability. And in the fight of COVID-19, civil society kept reminding the government, especially with the health workers, where health workers were being challenged with PPEs, where health workers were being challenged with even their payments, where health workers were being challenged with other things, where even those were not having access to even proper access to health facilities and everything, those were issues we raised. And what we observed over the time, the health workers were waiting to work, but the availability of instruments, materials,
Yeah,
the
working tools.
motivational tools that they needed were all lacking. So they were on the front line and it seemed that at risk. And so we noticed that all of this thing, at the end of the day, even the community themselves, you saw people going, instead of them yielding to the mandate from the government, where you should have distance between yourself and everything, people started crying up because the system was not put in place that would ensure that the community have access to food that were put in place. They were not effective. I can say this in for free. They were not effective. And because of the ineffectiveness, we saw many communities that shouldn't have came down simply because if you do a follow up, you will do what we call a cut off and you contain that particular area so that people from this area will not cross over. But because lack of proper mechanism put into place in order to ensure that people don't not leave from this place and people have access to food and everything in this place, people migrated from the affected community to
yes, to
another and they were
another.
extending everything. So we saw all these things collapsing during the point of the COVID-19. The next thing we saw is that accountability, transparency. If the donors gave monies for the fight of it, how much was given by this? Government of Liberia carry on what we call COVID tests and everything. Money was generated from the sectors and everything. We are here to understand where those monies are, what they did with those monies, who benefited from those money and everything. This is what we call transparency.